For a while, Trace and Lydia's updates had been sitting in a much softer space. Farm visits, family moments, and quiet time with Riker had given their content a calmer tone lately, so when their latest video dropped, the reaction felt especially sharp. It wasn't just that the subject matter was heavier, it was the way it was presented that immediately changed the mood around it. Just days earlier, Lydia had been sharing photos from Mama Jane's farm, and the response to those posts was warm and emotional in a completely different way. The setting felt peaceful, the moments felt simple, and a lot of people were drawn to how grounded it all looked. That's part of why the sudden switch into a hospital-centered video felt so jarring. The contrast was impossible to miss. The backlash really started once people saw the thumbnail and title, "We Almost Lost Mama Jane," paired with a photo of Mama Jane lying in a hospital bed. Before anyone even got into the video itself, a lot of viewers had already made up their minds about how it felt. And for many, the reaction wasn't concern first. It was discomfort. A big part of the criticism wasn't about the family sharing an update at all. Most people understand why loved ones would want to explain a serious situation, especially when so much of their life is already online. The issue was the packaging. To a lot of viewers, this didn't look like a careful family update. It looked like a health scare being framed for clicks, and the comments got very blunt, very fast. One person wrote, "Give an old lady her privacy. They should not do this." Another said, "The thumbnail is just horrible. I almost thought no one would exploit the story further to make money. I was wrong." Someone else put it even more harshly, saying, "Imagine your grandkid using your hospitalization as clickbait." That pretty much sums up the emotional center of the backlash. For a lot of people, this wasn't just bad taste. It felt deeply disrespectful. What made it worse was how the video was promoted on Instagram. Lydia's story included the usual creator-style push, new video, the full story, and tap, tap, tap. On a normal vlog, that kind of wording wouldn't stand out at all, but next to a hospital photo, it landed very differently, and people absolutely noticed that too. One comment called the whole thing "so gross," while another said the tap, tap, tap wording felt diabolical. Someone even described it as a form of elderly abuse, which shows just how strongly some viewers reacted. And while that kind of language is obviously intense, it tells you how emotional this became for people very quickly. Part of the reason this hit so hard is because of who Mama Jane is within the Bates family. She isn't just another relative appearing in content. For a lot of viewers, she represents something older, softer, and more protected. So seeing her in such a vulnerable state, used as the visual hook for a video, didn't come across as transparency. It came across as exposure. And the timing only made it feel worse. This all came right after those peaceful farm photos that had people feeling sentimental about family, tradition, and generations being together. So to go from that to a hospital bed thumbnail under a dramatic title created a kind of emotional whiplash. It didn't feel like a natural transition. It felt like a hard turn into something much more public and much less gentle. At the same time, it's probably fair to say this wasn't necessarily about bad intentions. Trace and Lydia likely felt they were being open with their audience and sharing something important, but that's really where this situation gets messy, because intention and execution are not the same thing. Even if they meant to be honest, the way it was framed is what shaped the reaction. And that's really the bigger issue here. When your life has been online for long enough, it can get harder to tell the difference between sharing something meaningful and packaging something too personal. Audiences today are much more sensitive to that than they used to be. They notice the thumbnail, the title, the wording, and the tone, and if something feels off, they'll say it. In the end, this backlash wasn't just about one video. It was about the feeling that a private family emergency may have been pushed too far into content territory. And once people start seeing it that way, it becomes hard to pull the conversation back. So now it comes back to you. Do you think Trace and Lydia were simply trying to keep people informed, or do you feel like using Mama Jane's hospital image and that title crossed the line? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates like this.